Well, Miss Nashville's teen recently gained a new crown. Charlotte Witt is now Miss Tennessee's teen. WSMV's 4 Lydia Fielder recently sat down with Charlotte, asking her what she's hoping to change in our state through the next year on her platform.
Yes, so my community service initiative is called Access for All, and it's basically giving families and individuals resources and education and information about healthcare where they're living, because in Tennessee we have about 16 rural hospitals that are either shutting down or not offering inpatient care. So my goal is that no matter where you're living, because I live in Nashville, the healthcare capital, one of the healthcare capitals, and I think that no matter where you're living, that you should have access to the same healthcare resources that someone maybe an hour or two away from you should. But my goal by the end of the year is to really let everyone know the amazing things that the young women who are part of the Miss America opportunity are doing. I want everyone to see the changes that they're making in our communities, whether that be through their community service initiatives, through just being present at an event, or just holding someone's hand, talking to little kids. I want everyone to realize that people a part of this are so impressive and are really, really making a difference.
So Charlotte's now moving on to Miss America's Teen in September. It's going to be in West Palm Beach. You can follow along on her journey on Instagram at wit.char.